This is how I beat Roblox's hardest game ever made, over the span of 4 entire years, with over 2,000 hours of playtime in total. Or well, quite possibly even 4,000 hours. So I guess you could say this video unintentionally took me 4,000 hours to make, over the span of like 5 years. However though, out of the thousands of Roblox games out there, which game really is truly the hardest game to the point it took me thousands of hours to complete? It definitely isn't something like Fraud Escape 2, and neither is it one of those badge games that takes like 500 hours just to get one final badge, as that really doesn't require that much skill. But instead it's an insanely long community-based tower obby game that takes skill to an entirely new level of torture that goes beyond enjoyment and fun. Yup, it's Jtoh Towers of Hell. And by beating this game, I really don't just mean completing the hardest tower in this game with an actual badge to it, which is what this guy on screen has done, with this being the Tower of Cruel Punishment. No, not at all does it mean that's all I had to do. You see, this game has a total of 343 towers, each lasting anywhere between 5 minutes to a few hours as of me making this video, which doesn't sound like the worst thing ever done, but every tower could take about 500 times longer if we also count for the fact that you have to learn, practice, and not fail a single time in the hardest towers in this game, as one simple fail could end your entire run. So the hardest tower in this game, aka the Tower of Cruel Punishment alone, could take most people over an entire month to complete, even while being skilled enough for this beast of an obby. And do you see how the thumbnail has Jtoh 100% written in it? Well, I wouldn't clickbait my audience, would I, huh? So, yup, I have managed to 100% complete the entirety of Jtoh Towers of Hell. For the 3rd time actually, but more about that later. So with that said, everything had begun around 6 years ago actually. But how exactly does this progression begin as long as 6 years ago, when I was literally 10 fucking years old? Well, I had started playing Roblox for the first time when I was about 10 years old. And yep, I know that's very late for that age, but hey, I wasn't your average 6-year-old with a phone in their hands everywhere I go all the time. I actually didn't really play any games until I was like 10 years old, but anyways. For whatever obscure reason, one of the first games that I ever joined on Roblox was literally mega fun obby, which I actually for some reason have real footage of me playing mega fun obby from 6 years ago. So I guess being a YouTuber really is my destiny, huh, since I already was thinking about recording videos when I was just 10 years old. Anyways, afterwards I don't know what brain cell just decided to turn on me and push me into a long path of Roblox obbies ever since then, but I actually went out of my way to do every single stage of mega fun obby and rebirth multiple times on my old Roblox account that is now lost media, as I have lost the account because I forgot the password. If anybody password guesses this account, I'm giving you 10,000 Robux. And after I had enough of mega fun obby, around a year later I had started to enjoy Fraud Escape 2 more than anything else in this world, back when I was 11 years old. I was actually quickly improving at the game and completing some easy crazy difficulty maps back then as well, along with some insane difficulty maps, such as this custom community made map on my old channel that I beat 5 years ago, which looks pretty fun up to this day, but yeah, this isn't that difficult at all. And I also used Bandicam like most people my age back then had, so that's some good high quality content right there for you. But anyways, at just 11 years old, I was already better than your average Roblox player at obbies, because for some reason it was my only high interest in video games, despite having no clue what world I was living on, as you can easily probably tell by the videos I used to make in the past. God, these suck ass. But anyways, not really a flex, and it isn't meant to be either. However, for the entirety of early 2020 and late 2019, I don't really recall playing any obbies anymore until my Fraud Escape 2 addiction came back, which was quickly followed by me finding out about the game Jtoh Towers of Hell through Roblox's recommended games, I'm pretty sure. And oh dang, this game was like the pure gambling dopamine to my brain back then, which is definitely better than Pet Simulator gambling addictions nowadays. But anyways, this game was an instant hit for me back then after playing it for a few days, with my first completion being the Tower of Annoyingly Simple Tiles, right as of middle of 2020. And this is where the real history begins. was going in order from the easiest to the hardest towers in the first area of this game, aka Ring 1, believing that I could continue playing the game this way, which definitely wasn't the case once I had realized the true difficulty these towers get to, such as Thanos Tower. 14 days after I had started playing though, I already beat the Tower of Impossible Expectations as my first intense difficulty tower. But this progression was quick, mostly due to me already being decent at the game from Fraud Escape 2, as my progression slowed down really quickly once I beat a few intense difficulty towers. However, I did do the Citadel of laptop splitting around 20 days later on my brother's computer as a 12-year-old, which is a pretty cool memory I have, I guess. After completing a lot of towers under the intense difficulty and the Tower of Tokyo Heights, I had decided to go for the Tower of Two Skill next as my hardest, with a furry avatar, because I'm not even kidding you, back then when I was 12 years old, I thought that being a furry was just a cool avatar trend and nothing else. So I went around saying I'm a furry and shit. I really am not lying when I say I wasn't familiar with how the internet was and how the world was, like at all for my age back then. But anyways, moving on. The Tower of True Skill ended up taking me an entire month to complete, but it was an on and off grind, so it was more like 5 days or something, including practice. But the Tower of True Skill did indeed give me a true skill for obbies, because I went on to complete many more intense difficulty towers and the monsters difficulty towers afterwards, and unlocking every single area in the game. However, I did entirely cheese the Citadel of Contrasting Regions and the Citadel of Skype Recognition using glitches back then, so my next hardest tower was actually the Tower of Eternal Suffering, which yet again took me an entire month, and for some reason I called the floor 10 fail quote unquote the saddest fail in Jtoh. So yeah, it's pretty clear I still had no idea the two skill players in this game would go to, let alone thinking I would ever be one of them in 2024. This is the point where easier remorses and intense difficulty towers were becoming more of a breeze for me rather than taking me ages, but my next hardest tower was the Tower of Yearning Victory as of late 2020. Which is where I actually am able to recall that I really wanted to beat a soul-crushing difficulty tower, and go beyond the normal Jtoh difficulties after beating this Remorseless tower, as back then completing an insane difficulty tower in this game was basically the same flex as beating a catastrophic difficulty tower nowadays. So I wanted to be part of the pro Jtoh cool kids gang or whatever there was back then, I guess. But an entire practice run of the Tower of Double Trouble later, I counted every single fail I had, and I had a total of 250 fails or more throughout my practice run, so I just beat more intense and remorseless difficulty towers until I suddenly just one day felt like I was ready to complete the Tower of Double Trouble. And what now? Do you think this took me ages and it's some cool crazy story just yet? Nope, I somehow did this shit in just one fucking day, as a fluke from Floor 5, exactly 4 years ago in 2020, on this exact same date as of me writing this script. Which is crazy to think of, that it's been 4 years since I beat my first soul-crushing difficulty tower, isn't it, huh? Anyways, it was fun in games, and I rebeat this tower a few times, which unintentionally improved my skill even more, I believe. For the next 2 months though, I hadn't really played the game that much, as Roblox Battle Season 2 was going on, which I know is off topic, but holy shit, the memories this Roblox event gave me are so amazing. The final stage of this event, along with all of its other challenges, ended up being extremely consistent to do, with the skill I had gained from obbies though, which made it way more fun, and looks like I was also a Creecraft kid back then, hence I uploaded this I think. I ended up beating the Tower of Difficulty chart revamped soon afterwards after a week of grinding, which is badly harder than Double Trouble, but after this nothing really interesting happened. Although since I did complete the Citadel of Peril, I must say, that is the best Citadel in this game up to this day, and nothing can beat that. I had ended up beating the Tower of Inevitable Failure pretty quickly as well, after absolutely raging like a crazy iPad kid with every single fail along with the Tower of Thinning Layers. I still remember crying in real life from simply failing the second floor on these towers back then, which is quite funny looking back at it now, but anyways. Insane difficulty towers are getting boring though, aren't they? Which is exactly why in early of 2021, I for some reason decided to do the Tower of Strategic Mechanics, 6 as my first extreme tower, and once again it somehow didn't even take that long at all for me to complete this. I guess I really did have the genes for being good at Roblox obbies inside of me, huh? I had so much of that gene inside of me actually that it ended up in me trying to create towers for this game, and I guess I learned to build towers pretty well after a while, as I ended up having 3 whitelisted towers, which, for quick context, basically means one of your towers has a slight small chance to be chosen out of hundreds of other towers as a competition in order to have your tower get chosen for a new update in this game. And unsurprisingly, none of them were good enough to get inside of the game. I mean, just look at this. This isn't good. Anyways though, I just went on to complete many more insane difficulty towers, along with non-soul crushing difficulty towers, believing I could someday have the entire game completed, but I quickly had my dream crushed by Ring 9's release, which featured the hardest towers in the game up to this very day, with these towers being the Tower of Champions Road and the Tower of Cruel Punishment. I did however do the Tower of Hopeless Hell as my next hardest achievement after completing a ton of different towers just from enjoying the game. What could I possibly have done next though? Well, Zone 5 had released, which resulted in me completing the Tower of Alien Radiance as my first terrifying difficulty tower completion 3 months after beating the Tower of Hopeless Hell, as I absolutely hated the easiest terrifying difficulty towers in this game, so I instead decided to go for the Tower of Alien Radiance instead, as it was an insanely fun experience, and it only took me 5 days to complete, which does sound like it's not much at all, but keep in mind, I have way too much free time up to this day, so 5 days was more like 50 hours in reality for just one tower alone, but it was a new hardest completion, so I was happy, I guess. I really love this tower though, even up to this day. It is super fun, and I heavily recommend playing this as your first terrifying difficulty tower if you ever get to this skill, or if you already have gotten to this skill. I did end up eventually beating both the Tower of Impossible Movement and the Tower of Flattening Nightmares, which are both equal in terms of quality, being absolutely garbage. And the Tower of Impossible Movement was just a joke to grind, because it was so horrible. In fact, I still remember crying and slamming my desk with every single fail that this tower threw at me. It took me around 120 hours to complete over the span of like 10 days because yup, I was still in a phase where I was acting like an insane iPad kid rather than staying calm. However, quickly after Pit of Misery had first released, when I had 234 towers completed out of around 250 or something in this game back then, I ended up doing the Tower of Generation Failure as my first catastrophic difficulty tower, as I honestly really enjoyed doing this tower up to this day, so much more than most people seem to enjoy this tower. However, I did use like an insane amount of gay BJ escapes and skips that would rather be impossible nowadays, as gay BJ escapes have been patched in this tower, and the gay BJ is basically an unescapable death pit, or well, meant to be unescapable because that's what escaping a gay BJ means. It means you escaped a death pit. So this wasn't really that much of a catastrophic difficulty tower in the way I had completed it, hence it only took me around 2 days to beat this, which is insane, but hey, it was still harder than the Tower of Alien Radiance, even though I cheesed a lot of it, and don't worry, I did rebeat it fully legit like 2 years later. It seems like I'm quickly progressing through this game at this time frame, doesn't it though? Well, don't worry, because next up is the Tower of Augmented Misery. And before I say anything about this tower, I must mention that this tower has had an insane amount of nerfing updates done to its final floor, along with most other floors of this tower, resulting in this being considered a terrifying difficulty tower nowadays by most of the community. But back when I had first completed this tower, it was actually harder than the Tower of Generation Failure by quite a lot. I unironically spent around 200 hours constantly grinding this tower in the span of 16 days, as I really took this game very competitively back then for whatever reason. And how could I truly prove that it did really end up taking me 200 hours to complete, you may ask? I had 68 final floor fails and ended up beating the tower on my 69th floor 10 attempt. The funny number hit big that day, didn't it? It was a horrible grind, but nowadays I do find this tower quite fun. Since you're still here, you better subscribe and like this video, as I poured my damn life into this game. Or at least do that for me so I don't feel like I wasted my entire childhood, alright? Okay, thank you a lot, and also follow me on Roblox and other social media platforms to further support me if you wish to and if you like what I do, but anyways. A quick honorable mention of a tower completion after the Tower of Augmented Misery would be the Tower of Uncanny Agony after Zone 7 had released. And don't ask why I 100%ed this zone backwards in difficulty, it's quite silly, isn't it? Because I've been doing that ever since Zone 7 came out, up to this very day with every new update that came out. But anyways, the Tower of Uncanny Agony was another miserable grind despite not being a new hardest for me, as I had gotten extremely rusty and unlucky at the game, especially with this type of gameplay because I wasn't used to it. But it did end up improving me a lot at the game, which is most likely why my next hardest tower completion was the Tower of Descent into Exile as of April 24th of 2023, quite a little while after Zone 8 had released, but it didn't really take me that long to complete at all. And if you're wondering why, well, about that, I cheesed more than half of the damn tower using insane skips that very few people knew of. Looks like I really liked to cheat the game, didn't I, huh? Don't worry, I ended up rebeating it with like 2 minor skips later on rather than cheesing the entire damn tower, but anyways. All I really have to say for this tower is that it's fucking epic, and my cat breaking my lamp was also just as epic of an experience, meanwhile grinding this tower. After completing the Tower of Descent into Exile and finishing Zone 8 entirely though by beating all of the other random annoying towers in this zone, I had once again started to believe that I could maybe, someday, 100% the entirety of Juke's Towers of Hell soon enough, and temporarily beat the hardest game on Roblox. I ended up having to go through the pain of Tower of Inception though, and this really wasn't a fun grind with how my life was going at the time, despite this being quite off topic. I was going through a dark time in my life around this time frame and really never felt that great at all, but I was depressed more than anything. So if anyone who is watching this and is going through a tough time, try your best to push through, man, and don't let yourself downhill, please. So despite pretty quickly completing what's widely known as the worst tower in Juke's Towers of Hell, I wasn't motivated to really do anything anymore with this game, especially considering the next tower I had to do would be the Tower of Champions Road, which I've always hated for my entire life. And this is where it all gets even worse for me. After about a month, I decided to give the Tower of Champions Road a go. It wasn't that bad until floor 4, and it had quickly started to turn into an Augmented Misery type of grind, which I really didn't want to go through again, especially while mentally struggling as well. I did end up pushing through though for a little bit and had gotten to the safety net once, and that resulted in me spending 1.7 thousand minutes on the second part of this tower, as it's a safety net that prevents you from failing below it. I was AFK for about half of that time though, but even then, this was probably the most miserable experience of my life when it comes to video games. And the reason to this really isn't the tower by itself or the tower's difficulty or anything like that, which brings us to Fingerlocking. Let me elaborate really quick by explaining what Fingerlock means when it comes to Roblox obbies and video games overall. Whenever you reach a specific type of jump that has given you a lot of stress in the past, whenever you had previously done that specific jump in a tower, due to the previously experienced stress, your brain just fries itself and completely blocks you from doing the jump. It's like if somebody froze your hand and prevented you from jumping, even though in reality, you really wish you could do the jump without this happening. And I had developed Fingerlock for truss flicks and truss jumps overall, which can be found in literally most Roblox obbies out there. And what type of truss gameplay does the Tower of Champions Road exactly have? Well, the worst truss gameplay known to mankind for anyone who is trying to beat this, which further increased the stress to my Fingerlock, making it even worse even though I had already developed a less severe version of this Fingerlock from the previous grinds I had done, which was the Tower of Descent into Exile. I had actually unironically cried, which I hate to admit, and wanted to simply leave the game so many times, as I couldn't do the jumps properly by overcoming the stress no matter how hard I tried to force myself to do them, which is when I decided that I had enough, and I let my friend who was better at the game actually beat this tower on my account. Thanks though Jtoh 58YT. I will come back to this tower someday though, as it really isn't that hard anymore now that I'm doing much better in life than I was in the past, and I don't have Fingerlock anymore. But have I truly 100%ed the game if this wasn't all my own work because of this tower? Well, that's for you to decide, considering I've beaten 2 towers more difficult than the Tower of Champions Road. But not to worry, I will come back to this tower and once and for all eliminate this tower completely off of my mind. So stay tuned for live streams of this tower. However, this doesn't mean I didn't end up beating the Tower of Elongated Runs all by myself though. I don't exactly know what about the Tower of Elongated Runs made it feel so easy for me, but I somehow managed to beat this tower in like 3 days of just practicing and grinding it on and off in about 35 hours of playtime for this tower alone, and it was instantly I knew how this tower beaten. But honestly, it didn't feel that impressive as I was still having an extreme case of finger locking, even on easy jumps in Tower of Elongated Runs, and I'm pretty sure you can tell how bad my finger lock was based on this fail on screen, because I had the finger lock so bad that I couldn't even press my shift button to flick off of the truss, so I had to mouse flick, which ended up in me failing. But I did end up knocking out the Tower of Elongated Runs out of the way as my 299th tower beaten, as I wanted my 300th tower beaten to be something even more special, something bigger. Something beyond the skill of Roblox games in every possible way. Except my Fingerlock prevented any chance of me moving on to the Tower of Cruel Punishment, and I simply couldn't handle the Fingerlock stress anymore, especially with how my mental health was declining a lot at this time frame. So without any idea on how I could possibly fix my Fingerlock, I quit the game entirely and gave up, despite having done the Tower of Elongated Runs. I then had a phase for around 4 months of just playing Geometry Dash for fun, and basically forgetting entirely about Juke's Towers of Hell existence, as I started to realize that I was taking a video game way too seriously. Until I tried the Tower of Cruel Punishment and its practice place, again around 3 months later out of boredom, and then realized that somehow my Fingerlock was just mostly gone, since I was doing better mentally, and I was also taking the game way less seriously than I had previously taken it. So here is a lesson, everybody. Please don't be like me back then and learn that most video games truly really are just video games, and you should play them for enjoyment, not to make yourself suffer even more. However, as I now had the right mindset in order to try and complete the Tower of Cruel Punishment once and for all, this tower is meant to truly make you suffer, but I instead had approached this tower with a mindset where I just enjoy the game more than anything else, which I think is exactly why on day 2 I had already gotten to floor 5 on this tower, quickly followed by me fluking all the way to floor 9 on day 3 somehow. And I surprisingly wasn't even that nervous because I didn't have enough practice on the later floors, so I knew I was going to fail either way. And yep, I ended up failing floor 9 with about 15 hours of playtime into this tower. However, this is where I began to actually take the Tower of Cruel Punishment a little more seriously, in an enjoyable way, which also led to me practicing floor 10 and the tower's final stretch for like 5 hours later into the day, and holy shit, the practice paid off, because on one of my first runs on day 4, I had managed to make it to floor 10, after failing floor 9 a few times, which did indeed lead to me failing the very start on floor 10, but my consistency on this day had been so insane in fact, that I kept making it back to floor 10, and also made it to the final stretch of this tower. And after making it to the final stretch 3 times on that day, and failing each one of those times, I had began thinking that the final stretch really wasn't going to be as easy as I thought it would be, despite practicing it so much. But for whatever insane reason, I was extremely high on dopamine or something on day 4 of this grind, to the point I continued playing for a few hours throughout the day, and had gotten to the final stretch a 4th time. And because I was expecting to fail again, I didn't really get that nervous until I kept going, and going, and going until I was at the end of the final stretch, which is where I began to realize I was about to beat the hardest tower in this entire game, after 3 entire years of playing the game. And indeed, despite the nerves increasing my heart rate to what felt like I was having a heart attack at the last part of this tower, I had done it. I was 1 jump away from the win pad. Did I fail this jump though? Nope, instead I got kicked once I had beaten the tower, for doing the tower out of order, as I had used a minor skip on floor 4 of this tower that skipped an anti-cheat checkpoint, which are basically invisible parts that are hidden throughout the tower in order to prevent you from using skips and exploiting the tower if you are an exploiter. However, my consistency was too insane to give up now though. And so on day 5, I decided to try the tower without using any single skip after practicing it more, but little did I know, I would go on to actually beat the tower without being kicked and without using any crazy skips this time on my first run of the day. I fluked the entire final stretch without failing it once, and there it was. I had beaten the hardest tower in Jtoh's Towers of Hell.
I fucking beat it. Oh my god. It's not luck, it's skill! It's not luck, it's skill. I'm saying it's not luck, it's skill. Remember that in your mind. I'm good at the game skill. I'm joking by the way, but like still, holy shit. I just did the final stage twice in a row because I got kicked the first time.
But as I've previously said, I have to 100% the game rather than just complete the hardest tower. Which means I had the rest of Silent Abyss to fully complete in order to 100% the entirety of this game. And honestly, I really didn't feel like having to do the entirety of Silent Abyss, as there are just very easy towers that I had no struggle doing. So I just used vertical mobility for them at the time, as I just wanted to get the game fully done with every badge. So I guess I paid to win a little part of this game, but like hey, I had just beaten the hardest tower in the game, alright? You can't blame me. But now, remember how at the start of the video, I had said I had beaten the entirety of Jtoh's Towers of Hell 3 times in total, not just once. Well, this was in fact the first out of the 3 total times. And that's because the Ashen Tower Works sublime had released 4 months after I had beaten the Tower of Cruel Punishment, which honestly was a really easy sublime to complete, with the hardest tower in this area being an extreme difficulty tower, which ended up taking me just 1 day to beat, considering I had lots of previous experience from every tower in this game. The Tower of Wicked Fortress was a really fun tower though, I must say, or well, at least for me it was, and this entire update ended up taking me 2 or 3 days to fully complete, which did indeed mark my second time fully completing the entirety of Jtoh's Towers of Hell, and definitely not the last time. Now, ever since I had beaten the Tower of Cruel Punishment, my life had been improving a lot, and so this motivated me to further push my limits with this game, which is exactly why this video exists. Because 2 weeks ago, Zone 9 had officially released, and this was officially now my last step before Jtoh would once again be 100%ed. At first, I didn't really think I would love this update, but holy shit, this final update turned out to be amazing. However, Zone 9 not only contains the Tower of Wildly Wacky Wonders that's almost catastrophic difficulty, but also the Tower of Empty Meaningless Patterns, which is not a simple catastrophic difficulty tower at all, to say the least. Before all of that though, I had first started by completing the Tower of Dusk to Dawn. Am I meant to hold space from the start? Oh, I am, okay. See, that's already a weird mechanic that just has no purpose. I don't get when they try to become creative so hard, it just makes it worse. It's not a good thing. That's like my biggest issue with towers in this game. They try to be overly creative in areas that really don't need to be that creative. What's the answer? Look around. Well, 1 times 2. 3. Oh wait. Yep, I'm gonna cut that out, maybe. I hope. No way, bro. My brain is not braining. Oh my god. And because of this tower being pretty mid, I expected many other towers in this update to use creativity in a horrible way similar to this tower, but I was extremely wrong. I thought of doing this zone in order from the easiest to the hardest towers in the difficulty chart, but I ended up being quite afraid of the tower of empty meaningless patterns, as again, I hadn't had proper experience with client objects and complex mechanics really, so I decided to actually practice this tower like really early after the update had released. After a few hours of practice in total, I had started to go from absolutely disliking this tower to actually enjoying it, so I decided to do my first proper attempt at this tower expecting to get nowhere past field 2 or 3. But this tower actually has a big twist to it. The Tower of Empty Meaningless Patterns has some insanely good button progress, which basically means you are able to get far into the tower much faster if you fall all the way down and land on this safety platform, preventing you from dying into the void. So in reality, the only way you can truly die in this tower is by failing floor 9 or 10, as floor 9 sends you right into the void, and floor 10 sends you back to the start of floor 9, which could result in you failing floor 9. And the most absurd and insane thing ever happened in my life on this attempt. At this point, this was just insane for me. This was my first actual attempt after running a little bit of the tower, and I was already at floor 7 as a massive fluke, which made me even more nervous than I could possibly explain. And I would then go on to pass floor 7, and since floor 8 is entirely all safety netted, this meant that this was an automatic attempt to floor 9. At this point, I was scared and shaking like crazy despite this just being a video game, because I had literally no practice past this point of the tower, and had no idea what I was doing, which indeed led to my fate. But not before I somehow managed to almost get to floor 10, on my first fucking attempt. And then I had to make a decision here, whether or not I should just go and do this tower first, or if I should leave this tower for later and do the easier towers until I had to do this tower. But I ultimately ended up choosing to finish this zone backwards in difficulty once again, just like the previous zones. But hey, it would be a shame if this video ended with easy difficulty towers and so on. So here's how all of the non-soul crushing towers in zone 9 went for me, before finally 100%ing Jtoh once and for all. All of the easier difficulty towers were not really that interesting until the Tower of Nothing New. Although TOABCD was pretty good while the Tower of Dusk to Dawn was garbage, I definitely think this is the worst tower in Zone 9 for now, and the best non-soul crushing difficulty tower is probably the Tower of Nothing New, because watching a video on this tower alone is entertaining enough, especially when you play it yourself and complete it, despite the fact this tower took me 120 minutes to do even though it's an intense difficulty tower. The Tower of Eye Candy was also pretty interesting for making me go absolutely silly mode towards this tower. Like, am I gay or not? Because like, listen to this. If I fall, I'm gay. Yeah! No! Come on! I don't want to redo the whole floor. The Remorse's difficulty citadel in this zone was also insanely fun to play through, even though I stayed awake until 7 AM to beat this. And so was the Tower of Voyaging into the Earth, another very interesting tower for an entirely different silly reason outside of Jtoh. Because, right before I had completed this Remorse's tower, Creecraft out of all people had actually stumbled upon the top 1 best obbyist on Roblox known as Monsters a Block, live streaming himself playing the Tower Tower of Spiraling Fates, which made his chat tell him to join the game and try the tower. And before my mans even attempted one jump, he immediately had realized what the game was a part of. I still find this super funny because he would go on to have his chat telling him to play Jtoh until the end of the stream, which I think he did, I don't know exactly. Huge respect for you, Creecraft, though, because he wished Monsters of Brock good luck on the Tower of Spiraling Fates. The Tower of Minus Facility and the Tower of Big, Brocky, Beefy Buttons were both extremely fun Remorseless difficulty towers, which marks the end of every non-soul crushing difficulty tower in this game. And up next would be the last two insane difficulty towers, before I would go on to 100% complete Jtoh once and for all. The Tower of Hollow Reformations is honestly so damn overrated in my opinion, and I am not calling this a bad tower, keep that in mind, but because of my personal experience I wasn't able to really enjoy this tower. I ended up completing it pretty quickly, so that's good I guess. But neither was the Tower of Paneling Barricades any fucking better though. This was actually the worst insane difficulty tower I had ever played in a very long time, despite taking me just one singular attempt to complete. Because this singular attempt was a 200-minute long run with every stupid fail you could possibly think of in this tower. I just overall dislike this type of gameplay so much, and nothing will change that. I am super glad this tower only took me one attempt at least, despite failing the final jump of this tower once. I think it's actually pretty safe to say that in my opinion, the Tower of Wildly Wacky Wonders is the most fun I've ever had with a terrifying difficulty tower in this game, despite having quite a lot of stupid fails that weren't my fault, which I think anyone grinding this tower can relate to. This ended up taking me around 430 minutes in total to complete, which isn't as long as I thought it would take by any means, but either way, this tower was super satisfying to play and complete. But you know what isn't satisfying? Not having the game fully completed and 100%ed yet. Which is why exactly the Tower of Empty Meaningless Patterns is the final step of this 5-year-long journey that you better subscribe after watching, even though my voice sucks ass. I hope you can stand my voice and not get annoyed by it. As I had previously said, I had gotten to floor 9 on my first attempt of this tower somehow. And could you guess what happened on my second attempt at this tower? Yup, that's right, I had managed to get to floor 10. And as much as I wanted to fluke the entirety of floor 10 on this attempt, I had sadly fallen victim to a fading thrust that made me really nervous, which then resulted in me loop failing all the way down until I had managed to get back to floor 5. And can you guess how my run ended? Yup, by this random instant kill brick on floor 5 that I had entirely forgotten about. And after practicing floor 10 a little more, as I really wanted to complete the tower on my next run, I had once again started cooking until I had gotten to floor 5 and had to go AFK for literal ages as I was outside. Yes, I touched grass, that's crazy. So I just left the game running with an auto clicker to prevent me from getting kicked as I had button progress, and even though I had just come back home not expecting to get anywhere far into the tower, I ended up cooking super well because I continued to progress throughout the tower more and more. Until to my surprise, the most insane thing happened. I was back at floor 9 once again, which then turned into a floor 10 run, quickly followed by this being a new personal best on floor 10 for me. And once I had passed the extremely difficult corner flip, is where I began to get extremely nervous, knowing I would most likely complete the tower. But instead of completing the tower, because I was so nervous, I ended up failing the first jump right after the corner flip that haunted my dreams. But little did this tower know, I was actually a god at consistency somehow on this run, and then immediately got right back to where I had fallen from the next attempt, at the final floor. And this time, I didn't have garbage nerve control as I knew that would ultimately lead to my fate once again, which marks the victory of all time. I had officially beaten the tower of empty meaningless patterns. So, we have reached an end. Farewell Drugstars of Hell and everybody I had met throughout my experience with this game, and this game's entire community. A lot of it was fun, and a lot of it was horrible, but at the end of everything, it's been 5 entire years since I had started playing obbies on Roblox, and I had finally done it. And something else I must also say, this community goes far beyond what Roblox limits should be in terms of Roblox obbies. And this overall was an insanely unique journey, and whether or not I have wasted my childhood years on this game is not something that really matters. It had taught me that after all, video games are truly just video games more than anything, but one simple video game can turn into a full-on passion that ended up starting my YouTube channel as you are watching this. And hey, yes, you the viewer watching this right now, I truly appreciate you watching the entirety of this video. Let alone if you liked the video and subscribed along joining my community in the description. But it is just a video after all. Goodbye and watch more.